want to welcome you today to a story about our diocese, about the people of South Louisiana, the Catholic Church, the faith that has been passed on to us, which I believe is a story filled with hope. One of my favorite Catholic authors and speakers, Matthew Kelly, has a great quote as he says that everything in history has been built by people who believe that the future can be better than the past. One of the tragedies of modern day Catholicism is a disbelief that the future will be better than the past. And this is disappointing because we have been given a mission by God. End quote. I believe that. I believe that you and I have been given a mission by God. The person of Jesus Christ founded a church, a Catholic church that is as alive today as it was 2,000 years ago. A church which has a truth that is an anchor and a rudder for our life. Sacraments that allow us to touch, taste, and feel the presence, mercy, and love of God. We've been given a mission to share that with other people, to incorporate that and exemplify that in our lives, and to pass it on to future generations. We've been given a mission to look at our future with hope. And if you know someone, or perhaps even in your own life, there's a disbelief in your life that the future will be better than the past, then I invite you in today to a story that has 4 parts of it. The first thing that we want to do today together is we want to tell the history of the first 38, 39 years of our diocese. Second thing we want to do is draw you into the reality of where we are. Thirdly, forecast what lies before us over the next 12 to 15 years. And then finally, invite you to join us to make a difference and to have a future full of hope. Now, let's tell the story. We were conceived in March of 1977 by the Holy See, and we were in June of 1977 carved out of the Archdiocese of New Orleans. A little over 3,400 square miles of beautiful land and beautiful people. Terrebonne Parish, Lafourche Parish, parts of St. Mary, and the city of Grand Isle. In 1977, we reported a little over 197,000 people who lived in the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux, and with 132,000 of those people professing that they were Catholic. That gave us a 67% ratio of the people in the diocese who were Catholic. 1977, 38, 39 years ago, 67% of the people in our area were Catholic. And as we tell the story today, we want to draw you into just watching the trends of the numbers. Now, let me just preface my thoughts today by saying that as we talk a lot about numbers, those numbers are people. Those numbers are souls. And we're not chasing numbers or talking about numbers for impressive or sobering statistics here. We want to understand the trends underneath the numbers. It's the trends that help us understand the questions that people are asking, the needs that families have, and the ways that we can best evangelize, serve, and walk with the people in their relationship with Jesus Christ. But it's important for us to understand the numbers, to understand the trends, and to be honest with where we find ourselves and where the church finds ourselves these days. In 1977, 67% of the people in this area were Catholic. Now we're going to watch the numbers here together. 1980, 64% of the people Catholic. 1985, 58%. 1990, up to 60. 1995, back to 57. That takes us into the millennium, 2000, where then 55% of the people in this area were Catholic. Now, as we progress together into the new millennium, 2005 at 53%, 2010 at 49%. For the first time in our history, 2010, we dipped below the majority, you might say, at 49%. That trend continues as we go into 2011 all the way to 2015, where at the close of 2015, the statistics that were most reliable for us indicate that 48% of the people in our diocese are Catholic. We have a beautiful history, a beautiful story. We have a beautiful people that live in our area and an awesome faith. But I think I grew up hearing almost instinctively or by habit people just assume that everybody was Catholic, or the far majority of the people were Catholic. And I love Jesus Christ. I've been a priest for 15 years, and I'll give my life to the church and to God every day of the week. But it's important for us to be drawn into the reality of where we are today. Today, we can no longer say that South Louisiana is Catholic, with 52% of the people acknowledging that they're not, and certainly within the 48% people at various degrees of engagement. We can no longer say that Cajun Country is Catholic, and we can no longer say that our diocese is Catholic. The reality of where we are today can be sobering, but I want to promise you that at the end of the story, there is an invitation filled with hope. But let's continue to press into the reality. On any given Sunday, I ask you to think about, what do you think the largest Catholic church in our area is? And you might say that it's the cathedral downtown in Houma, maybe the co-cathedral downtown in Thibodaux. You might say that the largest Catholic church is one that you would look at maybe the size of the building or the size of the congregation that's there. But by far, the largest Catholic church in our diocese are those who have left the Catholic Church. 52% of those who are in what would be labeled as non-denominational churches are former Catholics who have left the faith for various reasons, searching for God, searching for something that give them meaning in life, looking to be fed. But in 39 years of our history, we find ourselves with the largest Catholic church being one that is no longer Catholic. And that's an interesting reality. It's one that draws us into an honest conversation together about us working together so that you and I can have a promising future full of hope. Not only do we want to have a conversation about those who acknowledge themselves to be Catholic, but let's even press further into the numbers and look at the mass statistics. In 2004, we began to take a count of all those who go to Mass every October, every Lent. Why October? Well, because the summer's over with, vacations are settled, the kids are back in school, and people are into a rhythm in October. We take Mass statistics during Lent because that's a time where people's spiritual attentiveness is kind of peaked, and that their hunger for more brings them back to church. We take those Lent numbers, those October numbers, we put them together, and that gives us a number for the year. In 2004, 24% of Catholics in our area went to Mass on Sunday, which was 13% of the general population. Let's watch those Mass statistics kind of unfold for us now. In 2005, 25% of Catholics went to Mass. 2006, 24%. 2007, 8, 9. 2010, 23% of Catholics went to Mass. It's 11% of the total population. And as we continue to watch the numbers unfold as we tell the story, you'll notice that by 2015, 21% of Catholics went to Mass. That's 10% of the total population. Now, I want you to sit with that for a second. I want you to think about the reality of what those numbers tell us. Again, those numbers are people, those numbers are souls, but those numbers help us understand trends, and those numbers help us understand what's happening in our church and how we need to respond together. The total population of our area right now is 237,000. There's 24,000 people who proclaim themselves to be Catholic. 21% of them go to Mass on Sunday, which means that we evangelize 10% of the total population any given weekend. That means that 90% of the general population in South Louisiana considers the teachings, the sacraments of the church be disconnected from their lives or irrelevant to the path that they're on. You think about that. Think about all the people who are working hard for God in the Catholic Church. You think about all the resources that we have been entrusted with that we share so generously. You think about the great story that's been passed on to us. And every weekend, 90% of the people in our area are disengaged from that story. As we continue, in summary, at this stage of the story, in the last 38 to 39 years, we've dropped from 67% to 48% Catholic. We find ourselves currently only evangelizing 10% of the population and surrounded by 90% of the population that considers the teachings of the church and the mysteries that are ancient and 2,000 years old, but yet ever more relevant today than ever, to be disconnected from their lives. Let's press in and go a little bit further. Let's talk about our future together. The Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux is made up of 40 beautiful communities, small ones, big ones, ones in big churches, ones in small churches, ones in fancy churches, ones in humble churches, and all of them are awesome. All of them have their own unique personality, and all of them made up of some really beautiful people. 40 beautiful areas across our diocese. 17 of our 40 parishes right now sit less than 500 people. That's 43% of the people in our diocese, and 22 of those 40 parishes sit less than 600 people. That's the far majority. You think about our area, think about our diocese. She's rural in her complexion, beautiful as ever, very small and very particular. Over half of the parishes in our diocese right now sit less than 600 people. In the 22 parishes that sit less than 600, if we forecast into the future, the reality can be a little sobering. That draws us into the need to do something together. If you look at the numbers and if you look at the congregation in those 22 parishes, 33% of those people will be over the age of 70 by our 50th anniversary. Bishop Fabre has called for strategic planning, which is what we're talking about today. And he's talked about our 40th anniversary coming right around the corner. I'm interested not only in our 40th, but our 50th. And as we forecast into our 50th anniversary, in over half of our parishes, a third of those congregations will be over the age of 70 by our 50th anniversary. That means that at minimum, the possibility for leadership or engagement will probably be a little diminished. Some of them won't be able to be as active as they are now. But in that third, in that specific segment of the population, that's over half of the revenue, that's over half of the stewardship that comes. And that, of course, has a dramatic impact on the future of our parishes. Well, then you look at the other third. There's a third of those congregations in those 22 parishes that currently right now are in between the ages of 25 and 45. Statistics tell us that unless we stop the trend, unless we stop something, that in that group, 2/3 of them will no longer be in the Catholic Church by our 50th anniversary because of the trends of people leaving the church that we see to be true on a national scale and that we know to be true in our own diocese. What does that mean? That means unless we do something dramatic together, by our 50th anniversary, over half of the parishes in our diocese will sit in between 200 to 300 people at all the masses on every weekend. Now, I share that with you believing in the power of God. And I share that with you as a person who has a lot of hope. Not because I'm an optimist, it's because I'm a Christian and I believe in the power and the presence of Jesus Christ. But I believe that if we're going to effectively minister to the people of God, we have to minister with where we are now. And if we don't do something together, if we don't do something to dramatically stop the trends, over half of our diocese by our 50th will sit less than 300 people at all the masses. And of course, we know our youth are asking different questions these days. They're surrounded with different influences, and I think all of us perhaps know even personally how difficult it is for young people to keep their eyes focused on the Lord in the midst of so many things. But here's the reality. By their 21st birthday, close to 90% of Catholic youth no longer attend Mass on Sunday. 90%. Great people, great hearts, and some great people walking with them in the midst of their journey into teenage and into young adult life. But the reality is that without a dramatic stop in the trends, that trend is not going to stop. And 90% of our Catholic youth no longer receive the Eucharist regularly on Sunday. It's a sobering reality. It's one that sobered me. It's one that convicted me. And it's one that drew me into inviting you to be part of a solution. Arthur Anderson once said that in the absence of direction, people tend to create their own. Now, that might work when you're making a gumbo. You can make a gumbo however you want. Some people like a roux, some people don't. Some people mix seafood with the meat, some people don't like to do that. In the absence of direction, you can kind of create your own gumbo. But when it comes to salvation, it's a little bit different story. When it comes to the health, the quality, and the effective evangelization of people in South Louisiana, in the absence of direction, people will tend to create their own. We have 40 beautiful parish families here, and they're all doing the best that they possibly can. But in the absence of some direction, our individual parishes will create their own. And what that has borne in the last 39 years is this: a decrease by close to 20 percentage points in the percentage of Catholics. The reality that we only effectively evangelize 10% of the population. The reality that by our 50th anniversary, half of our diocese will be sitting less than 300 people on Sunday. And the reality that 90% of our Catholic youth no longer go to Mass by their 21st birthday. In the absence of direction, people tend to create their own. And what the Holy Spirit is inviting us all into is into that, a direction, a plan for our future. We're all working together. We're all dreaming together. We're all developing it together. And we're all sharing our resources so that as we look at our future, we can do things together. Now, as I've told the story, I've heard lots of different responses to the story. Some people are convicted. Some people are filled with hope. And some people have some skeptical responses to another thing from the diocese. So let me walk with you in some of the skeptics' responses to strategic planning and where we are. The first thing that I hear all the time from people is, Father Mark, it's happening everywhere. That's true. I think you could probably get on the internet, probably faster than I could, and find that dioceses in Louisiana or in the South or across the country or across the West for that sake are probably experiencing similar statistical decreases like we are. It's happening in everywhere. That's true. But it's happening here. And I'm here. And you're here. And we have a mission by God. We have a responsibility to do something. Back to Matthew Kelly, again, a great Catholic speaker and author and a man who wants to be part of the solution. And he often says that everything that is wrong in Catholicism can be fixed with everything that is right in Catholicism. Now, of course, don't misunderstand me here. There's nothing wrong with Catholicism. There's nothing wrong with the sacraments. There's nothing wrong with the scriptures. There's nothing wrong with a church that was founded by Christ and has been inspired by the Holy Spirit for 2,000 years. Nothing wrong with the church. But there's something wrong with the trend. There's something wrong with those numbers. There's something wrong with the fact that we're losing ground rather than saving souls. But everything that's wrong in that can be fixed with everything that is right in Catholicism. The same church that was founded by Christ is the same church that gave us St. Francis of Assisi, which more books have been written about him than any other person in history. The same church that was founded by Christ gave us Mother Teresa, 4 foot nothing, and planted in the most or least Christian continent in the world, and taught the world about love and redefined how we look at poverty. Same church that was founded by Christ has given us the saints throughout the ages. That's the same church that gave us Pope Francis. And America didn't know what to do with Francis when he came, right? You're getting better coverage from CNN than you were from EWTN when he came. Why? Well, it wasn't because of his fiat. It was because of his holiness. And holiness never goes out of style. Holiness always speaks to the heart, because regardless of where we find ourselves on the journey, we all have the same soul. We all have the same God who made our soul. You might say our anthropology is designed, is pointed to holiness. The answer for what we see happening across the West and the country, Louisiana and here, is not some fancy program and not some fancy this or that. It's holiness. The Catholic Church, I'll say, is better at helping people with that than anybody in the world. Everything that is wrong with what we see can be fixed with everything that's right about the Catholic Church. The second thing that I often hear from people is Father Mark, people are leaving because they want to be entertained. Now, I know that for some of us who are cradle Catholics watching this, that might actually be something that you have said, maybe something you've heard. For those of you who are not Catholic and you might be watching this, you might be startled when you hear people say that. But I grew up hearing that. I grew up hearing people say, well, people are leaving the Catholic Church because they just want the music or they just want to be entertained. I'll say this, that I don't think you can get mad at people who left because they weren't being fed when we didn't do a really good job of teaching them what they were receiving or eating, you might say. People leave the church for various reasons, and if we want to know why they left, we should just ask them rather than making assumptions of why they left. And different people have done that. And in those studies, we see that 78% of people who have left the church left because their spiritual needs weren't being fed. It's because they're hungry. It's because they were searching. And for whatever reason, they didn't find it in the Catholic Church, in her setting, in her tradition. So when people say to me, well, Father Mark, those numbers that you talk about, people are leaving because they want to be entertained. I want to embrace you today, and I want to invite you into letting go of that. Those are people, and we have an obligation to feed them. That's what was laid down to us as Jesus Christ looked at the first pope. What did he say? Feed my sheep. And he asked them to feed the sheep with the very sacraments and the truth that he gave Peter as he gave them that authority. So when people say to me, well, Father Mark, people leave because they want to be entertained, I would say that's just not true. And we have an obligation to be with them. People have said to me, well, Father Mark, people are leaving because of the scandals, or people are leaving because Bishop Boudreaux took away the fairs. Let me take each of those individually. People have left the Catholic Church because, unfortunately, the Church in her humanity, the humans in this divine thing called the Catholic Church, have sinned. And the only appropriate response for sin is repentance. What happened in the scandals that hit the church and here in America and in other places in the last 10 to 15 years were not only things that happened recently, but even pointed to scandal that had been around for a little while. I can only, with great love and yet integrity, apologize for that and ask for your forgiveness. Ask forgiveness for the victims themselves, the families that were dramatically affected, or even the faithful that because of that lost trust in the people that God had asked to lead them. People often say, well, that's Father Mark's priesthood or Father so-and-so's priesthood. Well, there's only one priesthood. It's the priesthood of Jesus Christ. And we, Roman Catholic ordained priests, are drawn into his priesthood. So where one priest is, every priest is. So in the priesthood of Jesus Christ, I want to stand in that place and ask for forgiveness of anyone who's ever been hurt by the church or any family that has lost faith in the church because of the sins of the people who have led the church. If people have left because of the scandals, I can only ask for their forgiveness and ask them to ask the Lord about their own relationship with Him and what might be He calling them to in their relationship with Him. Some people did leave because of the scandal. Some people left for other reasons. And one of the things that I often hear is that people left because of the fairs. In the mid-'80s, our bishop then, Bishop Boudreaux, made a policy to strengthen our diocese in her stewardship, and therein ended the fairs that many people in this area grew up with. People say to me all the time, well, Father Mark, people left because of the fairs. If you could be drawn into my heart for a second, if people left because of the fairs, I would say that they didn't really leave because of the fairs. They left because the church never gave them a reason to stay. The priesthood of Jesus Christ, the Catholic Church ourselves, has been entrusted with the mysteries of the Eucharist, with a timeless truth that is always responding to current realities. On one hand, the church has the mysteries that were given to us by God, and on the other hand, there's a fair. And if people left because of a fair, and we couldn't give them a better reason to stay, to come back, then I would say, with great reverence to anybody who may have left, that the real reason they left is because they didn't know what they were leaving. Come on, people are going to leave the Eucharist because of a fair? I just think that there's another reason why people should stay rather than the reason why people left. People also say to me all the time, well, Father Mark, aren't you just chasing numbers? You look at the numbers that are dwindling. People say, well, Father Mark, aren't you just chasing full churches or chasing numbers? My response to that would be yes and no. Of course, no. Numbers are people in those statistics. And we minister to souls. We minister to families, to real people, not numbers. But yes, there is a number that is very at the heart of my heart and at the heart of why we're telling you the story today. And that's this number. On any given weekend, there's a variety of those who are at different places in their spiritual journey. You walk into any church on the weekend and you'll find people who are staunch Catholics, been there, never leaving. You have people who are also just coming back to church for the first time. You have folks who are still trying to figure out where God is in their life, and those who could teach the catechism on their own. Every weekend in any church, there is different levels of engagement. You might say some people are 100% engaged, some people are 90% engaged, some people are minimally engaged. From different studies that I've heard, it seems that less than 10% of Catholics are maximally engaged in their faith. And that number, to me, is one that's worth fighting for. The aim here in strategic planning is not to fill up churches with people for the sake of having full churches. The aim of strategic planning is to help more Catholics become more engaged with the beauty of their faith. You might say that we don't want the number to be 10%, we want that number to be higher than that, because that's people, that's their relationship with God, and that is a faith that they're engaged in. People say to me all the time, well, Father Mark, strategic planning, that's going to be more to do, and we're already busy. Parishes are busy. Priests are busy. And I'll just say this, that if being busy were the answer for success, then every one of us, we'd be building churches left and right around here. Being busy doesn't always equal being successful. It just means being busy. Now, let me just say that as a priest for 15 years, let me just first speak to the priests. Like, I love you, brothers, and I have a great appreciation for everything you're doing. We're all working hard. We're doing the best we possibly can, aren't we? People in the parishes. We have people who might be watching today. You might work at your parish. You might volunteer at your parish. And we're all doing the best that we possibly can, aren't we, huh? And I want to honor, receive, and reverence the energy that people are pouring forth into our church. So maybe we're losing ground not because we aren't busy, but maybe because we are too busy. In other words, perhaps we're spending our energy, our resources, on things that may have worked in 1977, but no longer work in 2016. People have changed, culture's changed, questions have changed in the last 39 years. And perhaps it's an invitation for us to be busy about the right things or about the more effective things. And finally, some skeptics said to me, well, Father Mark, we don't know what to do. And that's a great and honest response. If we don't know what to do, then the answer is not to continue to do things that we know aren't really working. The answer is for us to come together, to study, to look at what is working, to talk about our people and what they need and what they want, and come up with solutions that are going to serve them. I think the first time I looked at those numbers, I said to myself, man, that's a big problem. And whenever we look at big problems, I think the tendency, the natural instinct is to come up with big solutions to big problems. But again, my favorite author and speaker, Matthew Kelly, often reminds us that big solutions to big problems rarely work because they're too complex. Maybe the answer, maybe the thing that can give us hope is not something real fancy and real complex, but something that's already simple, that's already ingrained in our Catholic culture, something that has been given to us by God that can help all of us grow in our relationship with Him. There's an old adage in AA that says, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. And if we're going to change the trend, perhaps now is a time for us to ask different questions and to not change the faith or change the teachings, but to adapt to the culture and change the way that we approach the beautiful people that are before us. And if we're going to do that, we need a plan. And if we're going to do that, we don't just need any plan, we need a plan that is intentionally designed to help people grow in their relationship with God. You might say we need a strategic plan. Now, I know a lot of times when people hear strategic planning, they think of some big fancy business thing or corporate thing. Let me tell you about strategic planning in South Louisiana. Sugarcane farmers, strategic planners. You and I have driven by the sugarcane fields in South Louisiana, and we've noticed that in harvest time, that sugarcane farmers don't just come up with a plan to harvest from the south side to the north side. They study. They know the crop. They know the weather. They know the sucrose level in that crop, and they strategically, intentionally study where can they harvest with the greatest yield. And they might cut this and leave that and go plow there. See, sugarcane farmers, we know they're strategic planners. Fishermen, strategic planners. You don't just come up with a plan to go fishing on Saturday. You study the weather. You study the tide. Where's the moon? What's the weather been like? What's the wind look like? Is the marsh water going to be muddy or is it going to be clear? What's the water temperature? What are the feeding patterns of the fish? And in other words, you don't just come up with a plan to go fishing. You intentionally study so that your plan is proven to work and you catch some fish. So whether it's sugarcane or fish, we know in our culture that strategic planning works. And all strategic planning is coming up with a plan that is intentionally designed so that we can succeed. And that's what we want. That's where we're going right now together as a diocese with strategic planning. It's about our want. It's about how bad we want to stop the trend and to proclaim the gospel to people so that we can move forward together. Essentially, strategic planning is about working together. It's about having a common direction and a common vision, one that's been given to us by God, and using all of our resources, from people to buildings to stewardship to creative ideas, so that we're working together on a common vision so that we effectively evangelize the people that we already have, that are in the pew, that are hungry to learn more. And the timeline for strategic planning is really centered around our 40th anniversary. June 5th, 1977, we were born. June 5th, 2017, we celebrate our 40th anniversary. And on our 40th anniversary, our shepherd, Bishop Fabre, wants to reveal, to unveil, to present to the diocese a strategic plan that will take us into our 4th decade together. If we're going to get there, we have to work together and come up with a plan together. And if we're going to do that, we have to not only listen to what God has given us as our mission, but Listen to the people that are in our diocese. Our diocese, a beautiful diocese of varied cultures, but one that is certainly rooted and anchored in a Cajun heritage. And we've kind of come together under the banner of the word allons, which means let's go. It's right in our Cajun French culture. And let's go together. Lots of people have asked Bishop Fabre, well, what's the plan going to look like? And he doesn't know. I don't know. We don't know. Well, whatever we come up with, we have to come up with together. So let's go, allons. Let's do this together. And what we're doing in strategic planning is about people. And to best understand what strategic planning is all about, I want to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a businessman, and he was at the top of his game. He was succeeding in everything that he had ever tried. He had a rich tradition, a strong history. He was the guy setting the pace. All of the folks around him were looking at him for the way that he was doing things and how he was succeeding. Time unfolds, and a new chapter in his business's history unfolds, and he begins to struggle a little bit. And those around him were certainly benefiting from that, and those around him were asking questions about what was going to happen with this business leader. He too was asking questions, and so he came up with an idea. He said, I'll know what I'll do. I'm going to bring all my employees together one night, and have dinner at the house, give them an inspiring speech and a new vision for where our company's going in the future. Makes the plans, sets things in motion, invites everybody to his house. As that Saturday unfolded and drew near, he was in his study, and he was putting the talk together that he was going to give to his company, his employees that night. Knock on the door from his wife, who had to dash out to the grocery store to get dinner ready, and she asked him to look after their young son. So he tries playing with the son a little bit, but his mind is really on the talk that he's got to finish, and his trying to be with his son is not really benefiting he or his son, and so he gives his son some things to do, and he goes back into his study and tries to work on the talk. Knock on the door from his son, and his son says, Dad, I'm bored. Man looks around his coffee table, and he has a magazine, and he opens up the magazine and he finds a map of the world. He says, I know what I'll do is I'll tear up the map of the world, and I'll ask my son to put that map together. So he does. Tears up the map of the world, puts it in an envelope, gives the envelope to his son, and says, Son, if you can put the map of the world together, I'll give you $20. Well, his son says, okay, Dad, I'll do that. So he walks out the living room, and the man realizes that he's just thinking that he's bought himself a couple of hours. Well, sure enough, 10 minutes later, the son knocks on the door and says, Dad, I've got the map of the world. Well, the dad is shocked. He says, Son, how did you do it? He says, well, as I was putting these pieces together, I saw something on the back of each of the pages. And as I flipped all those pieces of paper over, I realized that there was a picture of a man. And he realized that if I put the man together, I could put the world together. The little boy looked at his dad and said, see, I thought that if I got the man right, the world would be right. Which is true. If you get people right, the world will be right. If you get people, one person at a time, engaged with Jesus Christ in the faith, then our diocese will be healthy. Strategic planning is not some big fancy thing from outside. It's about people. And the aim of strategic planning is to help one person at a time. See, if you get one person at a time right, the diocese will be right. If you get one parish at a time right, the diocese will be right. Bishop Shelton Fabre's desire for strategic planning is for our parishes to be healthy, for our parishes to succeed, for our parishes to thrive. And the challenge to transform the church is the challenge to transform one person at a time. If we don't succeed in helping people, if we don't succeed in transforming one person at a time, then we're not going to succeed in strategic planning. But we've been given a mission to help change, to help transform people. That's our mission. We've been given that mission by God. And we have to move out of maintenance mode, because maintenance mode is not going to stop anything. We have to be intentional. We've been given a mission, and we have to be in the mission of moving forward together. And that's what strategic planning is all about. Along, let's go. Let's do this together. And where we are in strategic planning right now is trying to listen to you. And that's why we want to tell you the story. You've been generous enough to listen to our story, and so now we want to listen to your story. If you want to be a part of the solution, along, let's do it together. We encourage you to go to our website, www.htdiocese.org. Click on strategic planning. It'll tell you all types of things that you can do to learn more about the story, to learn more about how we're listening and how we might listen to you, and how you might be part of a solution. On the website, there are ways that you might not only tell us what's on your heart, but we've listed the topics that we've heard from people like you that people think are important for us to move forward. Get involved. Join one of the commissions. Show up, roll up your sleeves with us, and let's come up with a solution for each of those things. Along, let's do this together. I'm deeply convicted that God is the one who asked Bishop Fabre to join us in our diocese, the one who planted on his heart a desire for strategic planning. And I believe that this is a plan that is in the heart of God. It's worth fighting for because you, your kids, your grandkids are worth fighting for. And if we work together, who knows what will happen? But if we work together and we partner with God, then I believe that the future will be better than the past, because God, who is ever faithful, will show us how to proclaim the gospel to the people in the future. But we need you, and we need your help. Join us in our strategic planning. Along, let's do this together.